Welcome back to the Transgender School Podcast, episode 41. Today, we are so honored and thrilled to introduce you to Lilah Sturges. Lilah, did I say your name correctly?
You absolutely did.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank
It's a good start.
Yeah, we're informal here, so just checking on making sure pronunciation is correct. So we're so thrilled to have Lilah Sturges with us today and to introduce you to her. Let me tell you a little bit about her, and then we'll get into our chat with her. Lilah Sturges is an award-winning transgender author, and today she's thrilled to share with us her new graphic novel, which has a main character, a transgender main character, which Jackie and I both read and loved. We're super excited to discuss the book with you. It's called The Science of Ghosts, and it will be released on June 18th, which is perfect because it's not long after this episode will be released. So we want you to put that on your calendar and get it right away. It was so compelling, Lilah. We'll talk about it. We'll get into it in the interview, but it had everything in it.
Yeah,
Everything
it was
I love in a story. Amazing. So she's also written many other titles from Vertigo, DC Comics, Marvel, IDW, many others. I also got, I purchased, I wanted to make sure to get some of your other work, Dune, the official movie graphic novel, which I started looking at and got really sucked into that beautiful novel, Lumberjanes, Jack of Fables with Bill Winningham, and I'm sure many others, and I'm sure you'll be having many others coming out. So we want to make sure to let everyone know about all of your work. And you were also featured in the Austin Chronicles Best of Austin for hashtag transpizza, which we love. You used your Twitter platform to donate free food directly to trans individuals all across. In my notes, it says the Twitterverse. I guess now it's X, the Xverse. I don't know what's happening there. It's so hard to follow for me, but you did good work there to help trans people to get pizzas, which who doesn't love pizza? And we just love that you are using social media and your platforms in creative ways to support the trans community. Thank you for that. And I'll just read the description of your new graphic novel so that everybody will be excited about it, but we'll talk more about it and share our reactions to it. So it's called The Science of Ghosts, and the main character is Joy Ravenna or Ravenna. How would you say that? Ravenna?
Ravenna, like the city in
Okay.
Italy.
There we go. I did not realize that. Okay. And she's a transgender parapsychologist, and she navigates the mysteries of the afterlife while also dealing with the very real challenges of her past and present. Her first post-transition relationship is part of the story, which is fascinating, and also a hostile ex-wife who was part of her coming out story. I'm sure there's a lot of backstory that's really rich there. Clues to a murder long forgotten, and every twist and turn just pulls you into the story. I was captivated. Jackie was captivated. I was texting Jackie saying, "You've got to read this. It's amazing." So it's got everything. It's got the murder mystery, the ghost aspect. It's so smart, so well written, but it's got the current love story, the backstory of the ex who was the person she came out with, and that they broke up because of her being transgender. It kind of implied, and there's that tension between the two of them, but they still have to work together at times. So it really has everything. I loved the parapsychology pieces of it. There's so much there, and we really want to hear much more about that. But before we do that, did I leave anything out of my intro of you, Lilah? Will you tell us more about yourself?
Well, I was just going to say, can I take you on the road with me? And you can just do that. And I'll just sit back and just be like, yeah, what she said.
I love that. That'd be so much fun. Let's do it.
Spokesperson for hire.
Yeah, I would love doing that. I get excited about meeting brilliant people and introducing them to the world. So anything we left out that you want to say about yourself, though?
Oh my gosh. No, I think you covered it pretty well. I'm trying to think if I can think of anything else that I do or have done, but I think that pretty much covers it. I have a wife, I have a cat. Those are two very important things. I have two grown daughters. So that's kind of my personal life in a nutshell. But yeah, no, you covered it really, really well.
Oh, I'm glad. Jackie, do you want to chime in with some starting questions?
Yeah, well, thanks so much for being here today, Lilah. I read the whole thing last night. I laid down in bed at like 9 p.m. and just plowed through it, and it was so good. I guess one thing I'm curious about is you weave together so many different themes that you've clearly this is not your first work. You clearly have some real expertise in the medium here. And so I'm curious, how did you get started down this path? How did you first get into graphic novels, and what was your first experience with it?
I did not intend to make comics. That was never something that I had planned to do. I didn't even read comics growing up. So it was really not my life. My goal was to become a rock star. That's what I spent most of my 20s trying to do unsuccessfully. And then it wasn't until I moved back to Texas in 1998 when I joined a group of writers because I decided being a rock star wasn't for me. I needed to do something that didn't require so much like driving around in a van.
Mm-hmm.
And
Fair.
writing was like, I could do that at home. That sounds so much better. I joined this writers group, and one of the people in the group happened to be Bill Willingham, who at the time was not particularly successful, but then he created the series Fables for DC Vertigo, which became very, very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked me to write the spin-off of that book. And that was my first comics work. And I just thought at the time, like, well, that'll be fun. Be fun to write comics. Sure, why not? And then I just got really hooked on it. Ever since then, I've just been reading and writing, and everything changed when I transitioned. And I had been doing all this superhero stuff and more like dude kind of stuff. And then once I transitioned, I was finally able to just be, this isn't really me. I don't want to do this. And so my post-transition work since early 2017 has been a lot more. I've done a lot more for kids. I've done a lot more with female protagonists, books like The Science of Ghosts, which I never would have done back then.
That's awesome. And could you tell us a little bit about your latest publication, The Science of Ghosts?
Yeah, well, your mom introduced it so well. I feel like there's really nothing else to say, except I came up with this book in 2018, actually, and I had a meeting with Jan Jones, who was running Legendary Comics at the time. And when I told her about Science of Ghosts, she was like, yeah, that's the book. We got to do this book. And she championed the book all the way through getting it done. She's not at Legendary anymore, but if it wasn't for her, the book never would have gotten made. So I'm really, really grateful to her. It just felt really special right out of the gate. It just came together really, really well. And the artist, Elle Gehring, put everything into it. So I'm so happy with the finished result in a way that I'm not normally happy with my own books. And normally when I go back and read something that I've written, I'm like, well, that was pretty good, but this could have been better, and blah, blah, blah. This one, when I go back and I read it, I'm like, wow, I wrote that? That's pretty good.
Yeah, and part of what impressed me the most about it was just how many different themes and how many different relatable themes in particular there were, and the way those were kind of wedded with some semi-supernatural paranormal stuff that really took the story to the next level in my mind. And so I'm curious, as a trans woman, a lot of the things you wrote about were very relatable to me. Having the ex who doesn't want to be with a woman, the current queer spouse, partner, all of these things, and also just kind of the obsessiveness that I know many trans women have that I can have when I'm really into a work project. And so I'm curious, to what degree did you draw from your own personal experiences when you're creating the character of Joy?
So much, like a lot, more than normal. There's a lot of me on the page, and there's also I'm drawing in some of like, my friends and other trans people that I know. So it's not all me, but it is a lot of me. And so I have kind of this plausible deniability. this aspect of it, you don't know if that was me or not. But mostly it's me. So, and I really wanted to just, one of the goals was to write a book with a transgender protagonist where being trans wasn't the focus of
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
because we have lots of trans stories where being trans is the focus of the story, and that's great. Obviously, we need those. We need books like Nevada and stuff. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just say, hey, here's a book that's about ghosties and stuff. And also, oh, she's trans. And the fact that she's trans informs the story. It tells you a lot about who she is, and the way she behaves is, like you said, I think a lot of trans people will look at that and go, oh, yeah, I know what she's up to. That's not what the story is about. And that was really big for me.
Yeah, and I think that was what really hooked me, because if that had been all the story was about, I would have gotten bored and I'd be like, okay, I know what this is all going to be about. But
Right.
it was that underlying plot of, oh my God, what is happening with these murders, and is this really paranormal or is it something else? And I really loved how you took some real issues. I thought that talking about the guns in particular and some of the gun safety policy issues, I won't get into specifics because I don't want to spoil anything, but there was some stuff that felt really topical. And even the paranormal part, the themes around it felt very topical, like these themes of powerful people and mysterious, violent things that happen. And that was very interesting to me. I really enjoyed that.
That's great. It's funny because I've been a professional writer for so long, and I have a degree in English, and I've always loved literature. I'm still not 100% sure what a theme is. Like, I have a pretty good idea, but whenever someone's, oh, I saw this theme in your work, and I'm like, oh, really? Is that what a theme is?
It's one of those esoteric
Yes.
concepts.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear you two talk about that because of course, I missed all that. I didn't pick up on any of what you said, Jackie, about how you kind of noticed some things that you could relate to as a trans woman. And I as a cis person, mother of a trans woman, am always looking for what more can I learn about what it feels like to be trans. So I was looking for that and didn't see any of that. I just I'm a sucker for a love story. I loved Joy and Kat's relationship, and I was like, oh, I hope they can work everything out because they just seem so lovely together. And I won't give any spoilers about that. So it's really, I think about to speak to the themes, I think everybody takes their own themes out of it. They pull their own themes, and it's what's relatable to us and what we're trying to get from the story. And your
Mhm.
story this one is so rich that people could take so many things from it. And I'm so glad you mentioned the political issues that are clearly inherent in the story. And I really appreciated that as well, the way that you addressed so many different themes that are important in our world today. And there's that word themes, but those are the themes that I found in it. I don't know if they were the ones that you were trying to speak to. But you know what, since you told us before the interview that we can ask about anything, and a lot of people in our audience are trans and a lot of people in our audience are trans that are not out, and they
Mhm.
have written to us and said that hearing the stories of trans people coming out and sharing confidently and proudly their story helps them tremendously. So if you don't mind sharing with us a little bit about your coming out and what that was like for you and how you came to be able to do that, because we know it can be very difficult.
Sure. I was a pretty late bloomer. When I was a kid, I think that the easiest way to say it is that I felt like there was something different with me, and by the time I got to public school, that got turned into I felt like there was something wrong with me because a lot of the ways that I seemed to behave or talk or things that I wanted to do were clearly not what was acceptable, and I was very keyed into what was acceptable and what wasn't. Those kind of social cues were always very, very important to me. And so I learned to sort of keep that part of me separate. And I invented this kind of imaginary friend in my head who was a girl who was like my best friend. I had that imaginary best friend for my whole entire life up until I transitioned. And I would imagine like things that she would wear, things that she would do. I never would have consciously said, oh, this is who I want to be. It was just in my imagination, there was this sort of like dark area in my consciousness that I didn't look into. The place where only the Kwisatz Haderach can see, like the Bene Gesserit cannot see into that dark place, for all the Dune fans out there. When I was an adult, I'll try to keep this far from being novel length. When I was an adult, I was just sitting there and I was looking at YouTube very benignly, and I saw this speech that Lana Wachowski gave, and it was so mind-blowing. I think because Lana Wachowski was like a hero of mine. She had made some of my favorite movies, and to see her talk about what it had been like for her growing up, and to see her being celebrated, and to see her being someone that people loved and respected, just opened the floodgates in my brain. And so finally I could confront this thing that I felt without shame, like for the first time ever. And that was enormous for me. It still took me 5 more years to finally come out. There's a lot of navigating that I had to do. But that was a really pivotal moment for me when I could actually say, okay, I am transgender. And I was able to find some really nice people online at the time who helped me figure stuff out. I went through a lot of personal turmoil as a result of coming out. It wasn't really smooth sailing for me. I was married at the time, and I did lose that relationship. So that part of Joy's journey is pretty personal. Although my ex is not a cop, which is probably a good thing. And that's kind of when I came out. My parents were not super receptive at the time. And I wish there had been something for them at the time to help them understand and contextualize what was happening, because I think they were just completely caught off guard. They had no context for any of what was happening, and they felt totally blindsided. And I get that now. At the time, it was very, very painful because we didn't talk for like 6 months. I do wish that had gone down differently. And fortunately, we have a fantastic relationship now. But it would have been nice for that to have, for there to have been some education for them or some context for them so that they could see that I'm still their kid and that I'm still the same person. And yeah, so there you go.
Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And it kind of reminds me, I know one word brings me back to a theme from the book, where one word that I've heard a lot of parents use when their kid comes out is grief. And oh, I'm grieving my kid. I'm grieving the kid that I thought I had. And something that you touched on in the story that I really loved, and you did it in such a powerful way, was this concept for trans people of grieving the person that you never got to be for all those years that you were not yourself, and grieving that little girl that never got to exist for most of us. And if you could just speak to that a little bit. I don't know that that's something that I think a lot of cis people would understand, but that there's a real grief in this for us too. That's a really powerful, important message.
Yeah, thank you. That's a part of the story that also is not explained at all. I think that if you are not trans, you might read to the end of the book and think, well, those last few pages were kind of weird. That was on purpose. I wanted it to be very oblique at the end because I knew that some people would read that and immediately understand what was going on. I think that there is, for a lot of trans people, there is this sense that I should have had a different life, that especially my childhood should have been something that it was not. And there's no way to reclaim it. There's no way to get that back. And so that's grief. We grieve what we never had, in addition to the things that we've lost. It can be an incredibly powerful feeling. And it's something that I was really wrestling with at the time that I wrote that book. It's interesting because now I feel a lot more okay with it, but I can see it in Joy, the character, and love her with that in mind. yeah, that was always a real powerful part of the story for me, was working that element of it in.
And then I know this isn't related, but I kind of have to ask because I feel like the story plays with this question a lot in a really fun way. Do you believe in ghosts, and do you believe in paranormal happenings as an individual?
That's what I always tell people, that I'm not sure if I believe in ghosts. I'm concerned about ghosts. Like, if
That's
I were
fair.
to walk into a house that was empty and dark
Mm-hmm.
by myself, I would have concerns
Mm-hmm.
about maybe there being a ghost there. Now, do I believe in the cold, clear light of day that ghosts exist? Maybe not. But all that goes away when it's dark and you're alone,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly anything seems possible. And so I think we have to leave a little wiggle room for what we don't know.
I'm asking partially out of self-interest because I live in a building that was built in 1907. So I think a lot of people have lived and died here and
Ah.
might be among me.
I'm not counting it out, let's put it that way.
That's fair.
Yeah,
That's
and
fair.
that part of the story was it was really captivating and made me wonder if you actually, yeah, had some kind of connection or education or experience in the paranormal world, because you really knew so much about it, but it's just something that interests you. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I've always been super interested in parapsychology, supernatural phenomena. When I was a kid, there was this show called In Search of, and Leonard Nimoy was the host of it. And it was all like ancient aliens and ESP and spontaneous human combustion. I just loved every bit of it. And I could just talk about that stuff all day long. So getting to have someone who is a forensic parapsychologist, someone who is
Mhm.
a serious scientist, but who deals with ghosts, that's like right up my alley. That is so me. That is so my kind of thing, that it's just ridiculous.
I love that, because she has her PhD and she's so smart and she's so accomplished, but this is her passion. And so
Mhm.
that was really fascinating to me. And it was so well done. It was such a great part of the story.
So I know we've talked about Joy a bit, but I just found her to be such a deep and fascinating character and really part of what hooked me into this story. And so I'm curious, how did you come up with this character? What was the process like of developing her over the course of this story?
Sure. One of the important things to me about her was that she not be this sort of white knight character, or like this perfect
Hmm.
kind of exemplar of who a trans woman should be, because that's boring. I wanted her to be a real person. I wanted her to be kind of messy. I
Hmm.
wanted her to have some problems. She is very ambitious, she's very driven, and there is not an entirely healthy reason for that. That I think as a trans woman, she feels like she has to prove herself so hard, because she doesn't just want to be the trans woman. She wants to be taken seriously as a person. And I think there's something that in trans people, trans creatives, maybe you do feel like you have to work that much harder in order to get respect just as a person, without the asterisk. And so that was big to me. And just having her be kind of a messy bitch, not perfect, not particularly wise, but just very smart and very driven at what she does.
Very intuitive.
Mhm.
I love that part too, and I loved her relationship with Kat, and where Kat was kind of the way in of seeing Joy's imperfections, right? Of
Mhm.
like those very natural relationship points of friction that Kat would bring out, and it was like, oh yeah, they have some stuff to work out, as any couple does, you know.
Yeah, and I like that Kat is kind of represents the reality of what if you were with someone who was like Joy, it would be difficult. It would be hard to be with that person. And whenever we see shows about detectives and things like that, you don't always see personally like that person would be kind of hard to be with. And I wanted to play with that too.
Yeah, I definitely picked up on that. And for the audience, there's some very cool sexy scenes too, if you like that kind of thing, which I do.
Little spicy. Yep.
Yes.
One thing outside of your work as a graphic novelist that we found really interesting was this transpizza thing that you did. Can you tell us what that is, how it happened, and why it was meaningful to you?
Yeah, it started as a joke. It started because at the time there was this thing on trans Twitter where if you really wanted to support trans people, the best thing you could do was just find a trans person and buy them a pizza. Like material support. I thought, well, okay, well, I could do that. I could buy someone a pizza. So I went on Twitter and I was like, hey, reply to this tweet if you want a pizza, and I'll pick someone at random and I'll send them money for pizza. And so I did that, and I think like 20 people responded, haha, that's fine. And so I picked one at random and I sent them money for the pizza. And I was like, okay, well, that was fun. Moving on. And then someone sent me a DM on Twitter that was like, hey, if you ever do that again, I'll give you $20 and you can give away 2 pizzas. Oh, all right, let's do that. So about a week later, I did that and we gave away 2 pizzas. And I was like, well, that was fun. How far can we take this? And I think we got up to the point where one time I gave away 100 pizzas at once.
That's awesome.
But that was so much work and I really regretted it. So I ended up kind of doing it 5 at a time. Maybe 3 times a week was kind of what I settled on. And then for a while I did it weekly. It was very haphazard because it was just what I felt like doing. Like there was no rhyme or reason to any of it. There was no controlling infrastructure. It was just people sent money to a PayPal, and then I sent money from that PayPal to trans people. That was it. That's all how it worked, which was kind of great. And I learned that I had this skill for getting cis people to part with their money, which was really a neat skill to discover about yourself. And so over the course of, I guess it's like 4 years that I did it, ended up giving away about $80,000, which I was stunned by.
That's amazing.
When I went back and I paid someone to go back and tally it all up.
Yeah.
And when I saw the final number, I was like, holy crap, I cannot believe just you do it a little bit at a time for a very long time. And doing trans pizza was just part of my day. It was like, okay, well, it's Monday, I'll do a trans pizza. I didn't even think about it. I had a little piece of software that I wrote that picked the winners for me.
Nice.
So I didn't even have to do that. And then finally, what's really sad is what happened was that right-wing people and TERFs got a lot bigger on Twitter.
Yeah.
And they discovered trans pizza. And suddenly I'm giving them a list of people to come after now.
Yeah.
So I realized it wasn't safe to do it anymore. And now that Elon Musk is in charge of, I wouldn't do it for $1 million, which is really, really sad. This is why we can't have nice things. You're just trying to do something nice for people and not hurting anyone. It's not enough. People have to crap on it and find a way to make it terrible. So yeah,
well, that's a real shame.
That was disappointing. But at the same time, I've been doing this for 4 years.
You had a good run.
I had a good run. No one pays me to do this. And no one helps me do this. So I was like, okay, let's move on. Let's find another way to do this.
Well, you bought people a lot of pizza, so that's an awesome thing. I think that's
it's like,
really cool.
Check, but now I got to figure out like what my next thing is. So we'll see.
That's amazing. When you said $80,000 in pizzas, I got choked up. Wow, that's huge. That's a huge impact. That really is. And I think it also speaks to, as you were talking, I was relating a little bit about the work we do in transgender school because we put a lot of work into it. Not only do we not get paid for it, we put a lot of money into it because we have podcasts. We have our podcast produced by a professional producer. We pay a graphic designer. We pay for MailChimp. We have a lot of expenses for transgender school. So we have a couple of paid products that make a tiny dent in that. But I think a lot of people don't realize, and I think there's a lot of labor expectations of people in marginalized groups and trans people, especially, you got to be out there doing this activism and teaching and educating. Help us out then. And I'm not saying I'm not in the community, but I'm someone trying to contribute to activism. And when you said getting the money out of cis people, I was like, yay, because if you want us, those who are in the community or beloved family members, whatever, to be out there doing all this work, everybody needs a lot more support for this activism and this education. And I think putting all that weight on the people in the communities is not right.
Right. And there's a lesson here somewhere, which is that the ask was so easy. It's just like,
Totally.
if you PayPal $20 to this address, that exact money is going to go to this person, and they're going to eat because of you. And there was something really, really compelling about that, I think, as opposed to when you are donating to a big organization, you're like, well, where's that money? I don't know. My $20 could go to buy envelopes. I don't know.
Right.
I realize money is fungible. That's not how money works, but you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah.
No, but you ran the most efficient informal nonprofit I've ever heard of.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. To get
Zero
to 80,000.
overhead.
Yeah. And so no, it's really inspiring to us, Lilah, and we should talk more, Jackie, because we have a transgender school PayPal, which has, as of now, received $0. Right? But we would absolutely, if we didn't have to put in 500 hours of work, filter that money through to go to trans causes and trans people if we could figure out a way to do something like you did and get the word out. I guess I'm just saying that you've inspired me to think more about how we could do that and do more with what we have in the platform we have, because you were able to do that. But I did hear you say it was a lot of work for you. So I want people to keep that in mind.
Also, I got really lucky coming up with this sort of scheme that worked. I didn't plan it at all. It just kind of happened. If I tried to replicate that, I'm sure it would fail somehow.
That would be hard. Lightning in a bottle.
Right. Who knows?
And
I could stumble into something cool again.
Well, let us know. Keep us we're going to keep following you. We're fans, and we're going to be watching.
Next time you stumble on something, we'll promote
let us
it, whatever
know.
it is.
We'll promote it, and maybe we'll be part of it. And I just want to also address what you said about how the world has changed, and I've become more and more terrified of putting anything out there, just be blunt, because of what's happening in the world and because of the people we've talked about. I can't remember the name. I don't want to give attention to, but who was really going after trans people. And there were violence and the world has changed. So everybody know that we're all trying to still do our work in the world to give voice to all the communities that we need to be learning about and educated about and supporting and being activists for. But we also have to watch out for the enemies coming after people. When you said I was then giving the TERFs and the anti-trans people a list, that's a very real concern that we all have. And I'm glad you spoke to that.
And it's such a shame. And it is weird to go from, and I don't think people understand how weird it is, because you go from being a straight acting cis man who everyone is, oh, he belongs here, and then to being a person who is reviled. And that is a weird thing to step into, to know that there are people who despise you merely for existing. It's hard to get your head around. And I think it's probably worse if you grow up that way. But I think that the contrast when you have it sort of like thrown in your face as an adult is very telling. And that's something that I've never completely wrapped my head around, is like how to how to live my life and feel good as a person when I know that there's people out there who want me dead. That's weird. That shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, no, that's a really unfortunate and I think universal experience that most trans people have had. I remember when I had just come out, I had been out for a few months and I was hanging out with a friend, and I think we were taking the train somewhere in downtown LA, and some woman just started screaming at my friend at the top, who was also trans, and just at the top of her lungs, horrible obscenities, the most vile, violent, vitriolic things you can say to a person. And that was a real milestone for me in terms of, like, oh yeah, there's a lot of people out there who see us as totally subhuman and worthless, and will just scream at you or do worse to you if they encounter you.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate and scary.
it is. And then there's also the casual transphobia, which is similarly disheartening in a strange way. I was doing a rewatch of Arrested Development. It's one of my favorite TV shows. Oh, there's no anti-trans jokes in Arrested Development. No, there's a whole trans episode
I
of
remember
Arrested
that
Development.
one.
Yeah. And so watching it, I was, okay, well, they went there. Oh, they went there. They sure went. Yep, they did all the whole gamut. And I was, really? Like, is nothing safe? Certainly not 90s sitcoms. You're not safe. But
No.
it's nice to know that there are safe places like this. I knew I could come on to this podcast and not get a bunch of weird questions, which has not been the case for every podcast that I've done promoting.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had that experience as well. It can be very jarring and upsetting when you go back to a show that you used to think that you used to like or whatever, and see one of those episodes. I've had that experience many, many times now, and just be sick to my stomach, because they're representing my child in a way that is so inhumane and inhuman and harmful, and this shapes then what people think and believe. And
Yeah. And
yeah,
oftentimes just for a cheap laugh, for nothing
exactly.
more than just a cheap laugh. Yeah.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right.
So could you give us the plug? I know you have, this book is coming out very soon. Where can people find it?
So The Science of Ghosts by me and Elle Gehring is coming out. It'll be in comic shops everywhere. It'll be on any online bookstore you choose to use. Bookshop.org is a really good one because the money goes to support an independent bookstore if you don't have one in your area. You can call your local comic shop and have them order it for you if you like. In fact, pre-orders are huge. You could even pre-order it from that one website if you wanted to, because getting numbers on that one website that is also the name of a river in South America is also very useful. If you want to follow me online, pretty much the only place you can find me right now, since I'm off Twitter, is at lilahtsturges.com on Blue Sky, which I'm hoping will take off. You can see me in the funny papers.
The Science of Ghosts. Check it out.
Yeah, it's so good. You have to read it. It's amazing. Everybody, please read it and let us know what you think. So thank you for being here with us, Lilah. And it was a great conversation. It gave me a lot to think about. I learned a lot from the two of you, as I always do. And we want to make sure that all the people following this buy the book. You will love it. And we're so grateful to you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you
Thanks
so much. This has been an absolute joy. I really appreciated talking to the two of you, and I felt really welcome and safe, and I love that.
I'm so
Well,
glad.
glad to hear that. Thank you
Very
for being
glad.
here. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And bye, everybody. We'll see you next time.